my name is Nancy Mariyama. Thank you so much for inviting me today. Thank you, Terry, for setting all this up. And I want to say that congratulations to Franciscan St. James. You are the first hospital in the state of Illinois to achieve the gold standard Safe Sleep Champion status. So very proud of you for that. I'm very excited to be part of that. So I'm going to talk to you today about Safe Sleep for Baby, and I am going to finish with some product stuff, like just because they sell it doesn't mean it's safe. So, and we'll save our questions till we're done, okay? So once upon a time, we all were placed on our bellies to sleep when we were born because that was the standard of care. My husband is Japanese, and in the Japanese community, it's cultural to back sleep. So he was always a back sleeper in his family. They were all back sleepers, but my sisters and my folks and everything, we were all placed on our tummy to sleep. And so when we first came out with the Back to Sleep program in 1994 or 5, we had this big question of, are you sure they're supposed to be on their backs to sleep? And here you have this little baby turtle. Of course, he's rocking. And the dad is questioning the mother, like, are you really sure this is right? And believe it or not, we still have people who are questioning whether or not babies should be put on their back to sleep. So it's amazing after 20 years that we're still, working on that. We didn't have any safety car seats. These were some car seats that I pulled off the internet, and I, in my distant memory, recall having something similar to this that had hooked over the bench seat and it had a beeper on it. That was not anything for safety, just to keep you out of Dad's hair. Our cribs, they were painted with lead-based paint. The slats were really far apart. They were drop side. All things that we know now are very dangerous, and those cribs are all recalled and are not. Should not be ever used. Only the poor mothers breastfed. We didn't have, it wasn't a thing that mothers typically breastfed for my generation. I was born in the late 50s, and my mother didn't breastfeed any of us because she didn't want anybody to think we were poor, even though we were. And so our formula was water, Karo syrup, and pet milk. So really just awful, horrendous. And of course now we know, but look at how happy this little baby is. And then mothers were told it's okay to smoke because the stress of trying to quit smoking, or the stress of motherhood, was so much that if you lit up a Marlboro, it would help reduce your stress. So before you scold me, Mom, maybe you better light up a Marlboro. Or, gee, Dad, you always get the best of everything, even Marlboro. So back in, this is like from the 40s and 50s, this was okay. And I have pictures of my mother, this pregnant with me, with a beer in one hand and a cigarette in the other hand, because they didn't know then, the deep correlation and how important that was for moms not to be smoking. So I just want to start with, here's some information about the deaths in our state. So you can see that we just have provisional numbers for 12, so I'm not able to publish those yet, but you can see that our death rate for overall infant mortality is pretty steady. It's hovering around the same. In 2006, we had 83 confirmed SIDS deaths. Now, these were confirmed by the Illinois Department of Public Health, so these were only the deaths that were reported to IDPH. This didn't include probably a lot of hospital deaths. And in 2008, we had another spike, but we had a little bit of a uptick in births, and now our birth rate has dropped a little bit more since then. And in 2010, we still had 63 confirmed SIDS deaths. But you can see that our accidental suffocation deaths have gone up from 33 to 41. It's even higher now. And our undetermineds, this was in 2006 is when Illinois, and well, most of the states were trying to decide what is SIDS and what are we going to call these deaths. And so for a while we had this whole like a year of everything was being called undetermined. And actually, unfortunately, we're back to that. The Cook County Medical Examiner has decided, for whatever reason, that he's not going to use the term SIDS anymore on the death certificates. In many ways, it doesn't really matter because dead is dead. And whether it's a SIDS death, which is, we don't know how to predict it, we don't know how to prevent it, we don't really know a lot about SIDS, whether it's just a sudden unexpected infant death, which is a more broad term, you still have a baby that's died suddenly and unexpectedly, and we don't know why. But for our purposes, for research, for funding, those kind of things, it's important for us to have that information. But we are seeing that the SIDS deaths are going down because a lot of it's just the changing of the wording, but these accidental suffocation deaths are going up. So accidental suffocation and strangulation in bed, ASSB, is kind of the new thing that we're seeing. And it's not just in Illinois, it's nationwide and it's actually worldwide. I went to an international conference last year, and this is a common complaint from all the many countries. So this is a quote from Pediatrics, and basically all healthcare providers, staff in newborn nurseries, neonatal intensive care, child care providers, pediatrics, everybody has to endorse the same recommendations. So I know that everybody knows the safe sleep recommendations, and it doesn't matter what your style of teaching is because we all have a different style, but the message has to be the same across the board. And even if there's something that you're not quite believe, or you don't quite, I'm not sure that I agree with that, we still have to teach the same thing on your own. Ultimately, as a parent, we do what we believe is best for our children. And like my job is to give you the best evidence-based information that's available for you to teach so that you can pass it on to the parents so they can make an educated decision. But the problem comes in a lot of times when parents are hearing different messages from different people. And it's okay to have your own opinion, just not when you're talking to the patients. The parents all have to get the AAP recommendations. Breastfeeding is something that we know that is helpful, helps to reduce the risk of SIDS. And for a long time they said no. And then in the more recent, like 5 or 6 years, they've said that it's actually reduces the risk by about half. So that's a really good thing. Now, having said that, my son was exclusively breastfed and he died 30 years ago. The diagnosis was SIDS. Today it would probably be called suffocation because his face was up against the bumper pads. But this is just a funny cartoon about breastfeeding that I would like to, because we need to make sure that we do, and I'm saying the collective we, I'm not pointing fingers or anything, that we all want to make sure that we encourage our moms to be breastfeeding moms. I try to keep stuff in my car, little incentives, so that when I do a home visit, if they are breastfeeding mom, that I have like Bath and Body Works or something like a nice that I can give them to say good job, even if you only do it for a little bit, good job. So cribs, so drop-sided cribs are against the law and they are not being made anymore. And interestingly, I was at a Salvation Army yesterday and I found one for sale, big one for sale, $60, what a deal. And I, was looking for the manager, and the manager wasn't there, so I talked to the assistant manager, and he was clueless, did not know that these cribs had all been pulled from the market and it's illegal to sell them. So these were actually cribs that did cause death. This first crib, in one of, the part of it fails, like a plastic piece fails. So in one case, or a couple cases, baby went head first, so the face was wedged and against the mattress. And in other cases, the baby went feet first, again, face was wedged. In this case, the top part failed. This is a wooden portable crib. In this case, the baby somehow, this part failed. Baby got his head in there, and then as he was trying to get out, was just wedging it deeper and deeper, so that baby strangled. Same with this baby. This was a strangulation death, and you can see here, this is just a better shot of this picture. So it's important to ask that question before families are discharged. I know you talk a lot about car seats and did you go to the class and is your car seat installed properly? And if you're not, I would love it for you to include in your discussion, where is your baby going to sleep when you get home? Again, SIDS of Illinois, we are not for bed sharing of any kind. We believe in, one crib for one baby and a baby on back alone in a safe crib. But again, it's making sure the parents get that message, and if they choose to bed share, it's their right. They get to choose to do that, and hopefully everything will be fine. We do know that out of all the death reports that I get from Cook County, I would say 98.5% of those babies are in an unsafe sleep setting. They're sleeping in the bed with somebody or multiple somebodies. So there's always a big discussion on the internet. People are always talking about it. Crib bumper pads are still allowed to be sold in the state except for the city of Chicago. Along with Kids in Danger, SIDS of Illinois really pursued this and got bumper pads banned in the city of Chicago within the city limits. So if you were to go into a store in the city and they had bumper pads for sale, you could call 311 anonymously. Anywhere, a fine would be anywhere from $100 to $500, and they would keep getting fined until they took it off. If I find out about it, I'll do a field trip and I'll go out there and we'll have a discussion about it, why it's not safe. And you know, I get a little snarky sometimes, but we have been down to Springfield multiple times to try to get this a statewide ban, and unfortunately we have not been successful. You know, the lobbyists for the manufacturers, you know, organizations have deeper pockets than us, and you know, they can do things that we just can't do. But we're just going to keep fighting for it. So if you have you know, if you're talking to the family and they ask you about bumper pads, there is no need to have bumper pads, because now the slats in the cribs all have to be 2 3/8 inches apart or less, and a lot of them are really close together now. It has to be a solid, it can be multiple pieces, but everything has to be solid. There's no moving parts in the crib at all, so you don't have to, you know, so that's part of the drop-sided crib. But bumpers were invented way before I was born, because it was like a fence, because the slats in the cribs were this far apart and the kids would fall or try to get out. So initially they invented like a little fence, you know, which is the bumper pad to keep the baby from getting out. Well, now that we have these standards where the slats can't be this more than 2 3/8 inches apart, there's no need for that bumper pad. Parents will say, well, I'm worried they're going to get a head knocker. Well, you know, they say head injury, and you know, we're only concerned about the soft spot, and honestly, they would have to be going at ramming speed towards the railings, you know, to have a closed head injury. Not going to happen. Even arms and legs. Baby sticks their arm out, now where's their face? Boom, right up against the bumpers, and now you have a potential suffocation issue. And even with legs, you know, that's why we say keep the baby in your room for the first 6 months. For the first 6 months, that's what the AAP says. If the baby gets, you know, their leg wedged in it and they start crying, then you extricate them. And are they going to bump their head? Sure. And after they do it enough times, they'll figure out how the two work and they'll stop doing it. But they're not going to get a head injury. Broken arms, broken legs, we just don't see it. If you have a baby who's under 6 months of age that doesn't have something like brittle bone disease or something like that, the chances of it being broken by sticking it out is nil. It's really almost nil. And usually what happens, it's either something on purpose, somebody's trying to hurt the baby, they're mad, or more likely a sibling walks by and is going to high-five the baby, right, as the arm is sticking out, and they smack it and snap the humerus, and it's usually accidental. So they're not going to get a broken bone from sticking their arm out. Mostly it just irritates the parents because the baby starts crying and wakes them up, and then they have to go get the baby out. No soft bedding in the crib. We want to decorate the room, not the crib. So you can see, like in this crib, this is kind of similar to what my crib looked like with my kids, because we didn't know that it was not safe. You know, there's the bumper pads and the big thick quilt, and you know, the pillows in the corner and all the stuffed animals that all the aunties and uncles brought. But bare is best. So you've got this beautiful crib, meets all the safety standards, no up and down, and you know, no drop side, and then instead of, you know, dust ruffle is fine, but there's no bumper pads. And a lot of companies now, manufacturers, are making the crib sheets that are like a solid print on the top, but a really colorful border, so that it kind of takes that place of the bumper. That's what the parents like, is that cutesy thing. So bare is best. Now they might ask you, the parents, going back to the bumper pads, what about those breathable bumpers? Are they okay? Well, the AAP says we don't need bumpers of any kind, and we did buy them when they came out. We wrapped them around our heads and we walked around to see, you know, if you could really breathe through them. UPS man came and he thought we forgot to take our meds that day, so he was laughing at us. But, you know, there's really no reason to have them, and even though there haven't been any, to my knowledge, deaths or accidents with them, you know, why spend the money, first of all? And mostly, why would you want your child to be the guinea pig? You know, that's with a lot of these products, that's what I tell the parents. Do you want your child to be the guinea pig, even though there haven't been any injuries or deaths? You know, we don't want your child to be the first one. So smoking, we know that smoking is bad for us. It's certainly bad for the babies. Firsthand smoke, I'm smoking, and I'm, you know, if I'm pregnant, whether I'm pregnant or not, you know, all the harm that I'm doing to myself by smoking cigarettes, that's firsthand smoking. Secondhand smoking is, you're all not smokers and I'm standing here puffing away and you are inhaling all of this, you know, crud that I'm breathing. that I'm expelling. And you know, this is again from the internet, but here's this poor baby who's sitting there and getting all this smoke. I know as a child, both of my parents were very heavy smokers, and you know, sometimes even when I talk to parents and they say, oh, we never smoke in the house, but they smoke in the car, they're not thinking now you're even in a smaller place. But I remember as a kid that it was so much smoke in the car between both parents smoking, and the windows rolled up, and my sisters and I in the back seat going, you know, because we couldn't breathe. It's really important. The Surgeon General made a comment or a statement in 2006 that of all the babies that died in 2005 from SIDS, 430 of those deaths were directly related to secondhand smoke exposure. So, you know, that's how severe or how intense that problem is. And then finally we have third-hand smoke. So this is something that we've, in the SIDS community, have wondered for a long time and have felt that this is really something that is really true thing. And a couple years ago I met Jeremy Dramer from NIH at a conference, and he was talking about this. So it's kind of hard to see, but in this picture you can see where there's like white spots on the wall where photographs or pictures were hanging. All this yellow stuff is nicotine, okay? So that's all the nicotine. It's very sticky, very difficult to remove. So when we're trying to make a smoke-free environment, it's not just as simple as saying we're not going to smoke in the house anymore. For instance, in this room, if it had been, you know, you did a really deep cleaning, change out the flooring, you know, scrub it, put like a Kills primer on all the walls, and put new window treatments and new fan, all that stuff is new. If you as a non-smoker would go to spend one night in that room, sleep in that room one night, in the morning, if they tested your first morning urine, you would have metabolites of nicotine. You would be having cotinine in your urine. So there would still be nicotine in that room, even after you've done all this, you know, deep cleaning and painting. If they took a swab of your hand and ran it through the machine, you know, whatever the machine is, they would also find cotinine on your hand. It is so, it just gets into the walls. And the only way you could have a truly non-smoking home where there's no, you know, none of these metabolites would be to A, during new construction, and from there on not have any smoking, or B, go down to the studs. And it's, you know, it's not cost effective. People can't really afford to do that. So that's why we work really hard to make sure that we can, you know, get people to quit smoking. So when we start talking about third-hand smoke and people hear that, you know, they start to really think about it. Because we used to say, well, if you smoke, take it outside. You know, cover up, put a jacket on, or cover up your clothing, cover up your hair if you have long hair. And when you come back in, leave your stuff at the door, come in, wash your hands. If you stink, you know, put a new shirt on before you pick up the baby. Now we're saying that's not even good enough. You know, I mean, truly, if you want to be really, truly smoke-free. So, and it's tough. I'm a recovering smoker. You know, so. Is there any safe way to smoke around your baby? Well, this is pretty much it. You know, put the baby in a gas mask. Dr. Rachel Moon is the she's the head of the SIDS task force for the AAP, and she says there's just no such thing as passive smoking with a baby. If you smoke around a baby, you might as well give the baby a cigarette, because it's just as if they were smoking. And people don't believe it because they don't want to believe it, because they don't want to smoke. And believe me, I get it. I quit smoking when I found out I was pregnant with my son, started smoking again the day he died, quit smoking again March 7th, 1987, when I found out I was pregnant with my first daughter. And I haven't smoked since. The fatter I get, the more I want to smoke. When I turn 70, I am going to smoke, because I really like to smoke, but I promised my children I wouldn't smoke right now. So if I don't have any grandchildren, then I'm not going to smoke around those grandkids. So why do we still have some parents and caregivers who aren't following the AAP recommendations? Whoops, this is, okay. Because this is the way we always did it. We always did it this way, you know. So when I go to, this is my son, by the way, so, you know, we're at, like I would go to visit my folks, and before my mother purchased a crib, we would put him on the bed with the pillows around him so he wouldn't roll off the bed, and we thought that was the best way to do it. Of course, now we know that that's extremely dangerous. But remember, he was always a belly sleeper, because that's what we started off with at birth. But it's very difficult to go, like when I go into a community, especially if they don't know me, I don't have any credibility with them, that if I tell them all these things and they look at me, and if their grandmother, their mother, their auntie, their godmother says something different, they're not going to listen to me. So that's why one of the things we really like is using peer educators. So somebody who's of the community, you know, a teen for a teen, somebody who lives in the community to be educated so that they can educate, you know, their people in their community. It actually is quite successful. We did a big project in the early 2000s, but again, no money. That's always the problem, you know. So fear of choking. This is another reason why people have trouble getting the babies on putting the babies on the back. As a matter of fact, there was just an article that I received. It was in Medscape, and it was about NICU nurses and back sleeping babies. And I meant to bring it, and then I ran out and I forgot it. But trying to explain to parents why they're not going to choke to death laying on their back. So when I graduated from nursing school a long time ago, they said, never put a baby on their back, especially after you feed them, because they're going to spit up, they're going to aspirate and choke to death. Well, if we look at the anatomy, that's not going to happen, because actually the belly slap baby, this is the one we worry about that's going to choke, because now you've got the trachea on the bottom, the esophagus on the top. If this kid spits up, all this stuff is just going to pool right here. This is the child we worry about that's going to aspirate and choke. Now, the baby sleeping on the back, first of all, that baby's not sleeping as deeply as the prone sleeping baby. Okay, those prone sleeping babies don't have a lot of skin exposed. They're all squished up with their tushy in the air, right? They're all curled up. And those babies tend to hold their heat in, and they sleep much more deeply. The back-slept babies, right, they sleep with their arms out, they have a lot more skin exposed, so they're cooler, their temperature is cooler, and they're not going into that deep sleep. They get a good sleep, a restful sleep, but they're not in that where you have to go, baby, come on, wake up, it's time to get up, it's time to eat. Whereas, these kids, you just, make a little noise and they're, popping their heads out of the crib like, is it time to get up yet? So now if we think about the anatomy, so we have the esophagus on the bottom and the trachea is on the top. So most babies don't sleep with their nose straight up in the air. They usually have it tilted a little bit to the side. But even if they have it straight up, what's going to happen, because these babies aren't sleeping as deeply, is if they start to spit up, it'll pool in the back of the throat and slide right back down into the belly. If they have a lot that they're, spitting up, then of course, they'll just come out, the side of their mouth. But just like us, if you have something dripping down your throat, you're going to cough, to clear your airway. That's the protective behavior that we have that protects our airway. So when we explain that to parents this way and show, either this diagram or I use a doll to explain it, I find that I hear from especially the grandparents, they go, oh, okay, that makes a little bit more sense. And I think sometimes we have to go that far and explain a little bit more of the science to the parents or the grandparents so that they can understand what we're talking about, as opposed to, this is what you have to do, because nobody likes that. We just want to, give them the explanation. So sleep-related infant death. So this has many names. It could be SUID, sudden unexpected infant death. It could be SUDI, sudden unexpected death in infancy. They're all the same. Sleep-related infant death is a common term that a lot of the SIDS organizations are using, and that includes these accidental deaths due to bed sharing. And I use the term bed sharing as opposed to co-sleeping, because co-sleeping can mean, yes, we're sleeping in the same bed, or it can mean we're in the same room, we're in close proximity. That's also co-sleeping. So I want to be very clear that I'm talking about bed sharing. We want to room share but not bed share. And so these are some of the deaths that I see that come across my desk, because I do the education, but I also make the death calls in the state. And I do have some pictures. They're not graphic. They're all staged pictures, so don't worry that I don't have anything like that. This is probably my favorite quote when it comes to talking about SIDS and safe sleep. Baby must have a cot to itself, else it runs the risk of being overlaid or suffocated. Baby must not be covered up too much in bed, nor too little. So even in the 1800s, the nurses, Florence Nightingale, that's what she said. And of course, when I went back to school and you do theory, that was the first thing, I found this in Minding Baby, I think was the booklet. And so, I can say to the docs, see, even the nurses knew better then. Sorry, that was just a little editorial. Now, this is actually just like a cartoon that one of my daughters gave me, but this is not that far from the truth when you have baby in bed, between parents or between partners, because if you've ever slept with a toddler, or even a baby, they are every which way. This is more like a, little bit bigger baby. But, you see this baby is every which way, and the parents are trying to, find a way to sleep that they can sleep. But, you know, this is really not safe for the baby. I mean, this is a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but it, you know, it kind of explains it to you. Bed sharing, we know that when babies bed share with, whether it's a parent or another adult, although it's a little bit higher if it's somebody other than the mother. The risks, the risk of death is up to 5-fold, up to 3 months of age. So the babies that we're the most concerned about are the babies that are 12 weeks and under and adjust for gestational age, okay? Because it becomes a competition issue. When you have a 9-month-old in the bed, and it doesn't mean that it couldn't happen then, I mean, a 9-month-old could still suffocate in the bed, but when you have a 9-month-old in the bed, and if something gets near them, they will know to, or whatever, to push it away. When you have a newborn, an under 12 weeks, they aren't able to or whatever to push things away. And if you have, say, a memory foam mattress, because those really do, you know, take like the imprint of whatever's there. If you have an infant on an adult bed or on a mattress that has that memory foam, and they get their face down, and if you have two even relatively large parents, you know, on either side, the dip that it makes is not something where the baby can actually, even if they could lift their head up, are not likely to be able to do. And we've seen a number of deaths from babies in memory foam beds or like sleep number. I don't hate to use that word because that's the only one I know, though, like the sleep number, because if you have two different firmness, you know, levels of the bed. We had a death where mom had her side really firm and dad had his not so much. Dad got up to go to work, brought the baby, put the baby in bed with the mother. Mother was playing with the baby, nursing the baby, fell asleep, and the mother had the baby next to her on her side of the bed, but when she fell asleep and the baby fell asleep, baby rolled onto the other side where the dad's, where it was really soft, was prone and suffocated, you know, so preventable death. And there is absolutely no study that shows that bed sharing is protective for SIDS. So if somebody tells you, oh yeah, you know, I read this, it could be an editorial piece, but there's no evidence-based study that shows that it's protective. And according to Dr. Moon, when you bed share, the risks don't add up, but they multiply exponentially. So this is me as a new mother. And I knew better not to put Brendan on the other side of me where he would get squished between my body and the couch. But I thought it would be okay. This is June, by the way. Look at how we're covered up. We didn't even have air conditioning then. He's wrapped in a blanket, and then we've got this little cover lid on us. I don't really know what I was thinking. This is like a little nester, and they sell different kind of styles of this. They have some that are soft-sided, but they're oval and whatever. Still not a great idea because they compress. So, you know, if you had sides that were really compressed, you know, if you rolled over, well, this one's got positioners in here, so we know that those are bad. They haven't been banned, but they're really a bad idea. And we would only use a positioner if the physician ordered it. So we don't recommend this at all because, first of all, this has no bottom on it and the baby could scoot. But most importantly, I don't know anybody who can actually sleep like this all night long, right? Covers are at your hips and one little pillow, and it just is like so unrealistic. This is a quick video I want to show you. It's really, truly like 10 or 15 seconds. We were going to try to make this and we didn't have any money, and then I found that Michigan made it, so I shamefully sharing, I guess they call it, or lovingly lifted. But this is all in real time. People feel different ways about this. I mean, I've had people, you know, chew me out for this, and, you know, I don't really care. My skin is thicker than that. But I think it really does give, because we have a whole support group full of parents who say, I would never roll over on my baby. I would know that there was something going on. Well, you can see this mom, she's tired, and she is, you know, sleeping every which way. So how do you know that you wouldn't roll over on your baby? And as a newborn, there's not that much that you have to occlude before the baby can't breathe, or even something as simple as putting your arm over the baby, or even just your forearm over the baby is enough that the baby wouldn't be able to expand their lungs. So it's just not worth it. You know, the risks are too high, in my opinion. This is my husband sleeping with our son, and you know, it's just, it's not uncommon. We see this all the time, and we've maybe have most of us done this. And you know, is there anything better than a freshly fed, burped, bathed, diapered baby snoozing on? I mean, but it's like anesthesia, right? You put the baby in a, next thing you know, you're sleeping. As long as you're awake, it's okay because you're aware of what the baby is doing. It's just difficult to stay awake. Now, we've had a number of deaths where baby rolled over, you know, and got wedged in between the dad's arm or underarm and the couch. Here, this is a sectional sofa, so, you know, he could have fallen off and rolled here. Our dog was sleeping down here. I mean, you know, we didn't, you do the best you can with what you know. We didn't know that it was a dangerous thing because I never thought that you could actually roll over on your baby, or, you know, anything like this can happen, but clearly it can. This is a gal that I met in, she's from New Zealand, and she teaches, when she's talking to parents and trying to teach them how babies can suffocate, she uses a straw. So she taught her nurses to use this straw when they're talking about suffocation. So the first one is, of course, when you cover the edge, you know, the baby can't take a breath in because it's covered. If the nose is pinched, like let's say, oh, saw on 4th of July, I saw a mother, she was carrying her infant in a snuggly. I would say the baby was probably 2 months old. Had the baby in her snuggly and way down, and the baby was right in the cleave of her chest, in her breast, which I was like, ooh. And the baby's head was turned a little bit, but her nose was all squished, and she had a pacifier in. And I was going, ma'am, you know, like trying, you know, because I'm not judging her parenting skills. I just don't want her baby to die. Plus, it was so warm. She was not, you know, like, she was not mean, and she was very nice to me, but I could tell she was annoyed that I was, you know, saying that to her. But I can live with that. I can't live with the fact that if I don't say anything and I mean, how would I know? But I mean, if I didn't say something and something happened to that baby, for Pete's sake, this is what I do. How could I I couldn't live with myself. Bending. Okay, so this is when babies are in a car seat and this car seat is installed properly, right? We have a good straight airway. Baby can take a deep breath and breathe in, you know, you have good exchange, all that. When we have a baby who's in a car seat, A, that's not the right car seat for them, B, it's not installed properly, or most importantly, they take it out of the car and put it on the floor because they're, you know, going somewhere, and they bring the baby, and now the baby is like a mush pot, right? The baby's all squished over like this. So I want you to try this with me. Put your chin on your chest, roll your shoulders forward, now take a deep breath. It's kind of hard, isn't it? Well, that's what this little baby is doing, and this baby really struggles to get nice, good, fresh air to breathe, and actually their O2 sat rate can drop by more than 25%, you know, and we have had deaths in car seats and swings because they're in this squished down position. You know, and also with the bending, you know, years ago, I just like back when my kids were babies, the swing that I had was that old crank swing, right? Yeah. Which sounds like a pain in the neck, and it kind of is, but there's a point to it. Because A, it only had one sitting arrangement, you know, no adjusting. So your baby had to have good upper body, head and neck control. And you would put the baby in it, and you would crank it. It would go for 10 or 12 minutes, and then it would stop. You might crank it again, but you're not going to do that all day long. Now that we have, you know, like these electric or you know, the battery run swings, babies can spend hours in there, and it's not intentional, but the time goes by so quickly, you know, you don't realize that the baby's been in there a long time. And we've been seeing more and more deaths where the baby's in the swing and fall asleep. So they're meant for swinging while the baby's awake. If they fall asleep, they should be taken out and placed this way to sleep. Same thing with those rockin' sleeper nappers, napper sleepers. A couple stores make them. Fisher-Price makes them. Graco, I think, makes one. Do you know what I'm talking about? It looks like the old Papasan chairs we used to get from Pure One, but it actually is like holding the baby in a hug, because the baby sits in almost like a sling kind of a position. It's mushy, and so the baby's not sleeping like this, and it's called a napper sleeper. So, you know, you see on Facebook, people are using them all the time. Now, again, there haven't been any deaths or injuries that I know about, because I do keep up with that stuff. But again, why would you want your baby to be the guinea pig? Because when that baby is sleeping in there, this baby is all squished up and can't take a nice deep breath. So babies always need to sleep flat on their backs on a firm, flat surface. That's the safest way for the baby to sleep. And then finally, press. So that comes with, like I said before, when somebody puts their arm over the baby's back, now the baby can't expand. So, you know, those are, you know, if you don't have anything else, I just think this is kind of a cool way to explain how suffocation can occur with a baby. So we have a teenage mom here, and she is sleeping with her baby, but she's sleeping with that baby like it's a teddy bear. You know, do you think that baby's exchanging? I mean, that baby's not getting good fresh air. And that is, to me, is a very scary picture, and I don't know, well, she's in a hospital or some kind of a setting because she's got a gown on. This dad, I think he's trying to do the right thing, but babies should never ever sleep on a boppy because, again, baby's elevated. When I go into the home, I see it so many times that they have a boppy in the bed. And, you know, trying to explain to them what the boppy is really for, using it as a breastfeeding assist, or when the baby's learning to sit up before they have 100% control, but you're right there. Never put the baby in the boppy and walk away and leave him to sleep like that because you might come back to a tragedy. This little girl, she's a subsequent SIDS, and she's the second subsequent. She's going into 3rd grade, and she's hilarious. She's got screaming red hair, and she is just a delight. But her mother is one of our educators, and she wanted to try these breathable bumpers. And you can see how it folded over on itself, and it doesn't have, it's not like one solid piece that goes under the mattress. It's just goes right around like this. Now, to my knowledge, nobody's done this yet, but it is not beyond the realm of possibility that a baby could get up underneath that, right? Yeah. And it could be a strangulation issue. So, you know, bottom line, some of these things, it all just comes down to money. And because we live in the U.S., if you can think of it and manufacture it and market it, you can sell it until, you know, somebody dies. And actually with baby stuff, most of the time 5 or 6 or 10 babies have to die before they pull it off the market, which is unbelievable to me. The other part of this is that this baby, she always slept in a sleep sack, and she never had a blanket because we're trying to have blanket-free sleeping. And I know you guys are doing that. So in this case, she's 9 months old in this photo, and Mom, she fell asleep on the rug in the living room, and Dad had gone out with the other kids, and she was home alone, and she thought, oh, I'm just going to put her, you know, she went to put her in her crib, and she thought, she's 9 months old. She'll be fine with this little, you know, receiving blanket. She went back to check on her 30 minutes later, and this is what she found. Now, for me, I would have been, you probably would have heard me all the way from, you know, Rockford, screaming like crazy. And this mom is much more calmer than I am. And then she saw her back moving, that she was breathing, and only Natalie would think to go get her camera to take a picture for training purposes. But, I mean, we do see deaths like this, not just in Illinois, but all over the U.S. So, you know, this is a baby who's not used to a blanket. Co-bedding of twins. We had, in about a 16-month period, we had 4 deaths with twins involved. And in one case, both twins died because they were both sleeping together in a pack and play. A pack and play is an excellent thing to use, especially if it's, you know, new, and, you know, of course we want it to be safe. But they're made for one baby. All cribs are made for one baby. And to have 2 babies in here, you know, this is what happens is one lays on the other one, and then you could have a fatality. So 1 baby per crib. So a lot of times, you know, I mean, we used to have a yellow lab, and he was part of the family, but not so much that they should sleep with the babies. And I have seen small animals and a couple large animals in the area where the baby sleeps, whether it's in the pack and play or the playpen. So, you know, the head of that dog is so heavy that that could cause the baby to not be able to breathe right, plus the baby's on the side. And then the old wives' tale about the cat, you know, pulling the milk breath, you know, sniffing the milk breath and trying to suffocate the baby. It isn't that, but, you know, our pets love us. They want to be near us. And this kitty doesn't know, like, oh, this is dangerous for me. I shouldn't be like. And this little girl sleeping on her belly, and she's got this dog as a hat, kind of, you know, sleeping like that. So, you know, I know it's really cute, and people love their pets, and we love ours, but it's not a good idea for pets and babies to be sleeping together. So these are the AAP recommendations that were updated from 2011. Back to sleep for every sleep. So I brought you some of our postcards, which are safe sleep for baby is as easy as the ABCs, alone on their back, in a safe crib, in a smoke-free environment. Using a firm sleep surface, so something that is as hard as this table is a better option than putting baby in an adult mattress or a regular mattress or on the couch or whatever. Keep soft objects and loose bedding out of the crib. Bare is best, you know, less is more. Pregnant women, of course, we want them to have good regular prenatal care. Oftentimes the mothers or the babies who die are born to mothers who have little or no prenatal care. you know, they show up in the ED and they're in full-blown labor. And one of the committees that I sit on, the Fetal Infant Mortality Review Team, we've talked to these mothers, and what they've said is that this is not my first baby, so what do I have to have prenatal care for? I already know what's going to happen. They don't understand about like the blood pressure and the blood sugar and all those things that we're looking for. Room sharing without bed sharing, breastfeeding, pacifier use. So when that study first came out, people were freaking out because they were thinking it's like a switch. Put this binky in, they're safe, take it out, they're going to die. And that isn't it at all. It is just a risk reduction method. And the reason they believe that it is effective is because when the baby has the pacifier and they're swallowing, helps them to keep them from going into that deep sleep. And also it helps to keep the airway patent. So that's what they're looking at. So our question was, so if you have non-nutritive sucking with the pacifier, what about fingers or breast? You know, just that, you know, they're not hungry, they're just sucking. And actually the fingers, non-nutritive sucking of the fingers doesn't seem to have that same protective quality. It has something to do with the pacifier and the shape of the tongue and the mouth and the soft palate, because once the baby spits that out, the soft palate and the tongue, that all stays in the same position for a number of hours. So it's just a strange, because I was thinking, well, of course, you know, if you had the fingers, should be the same, but it's not, because it has to do with the actual shape of the pacifier. And the pacifiers that we like are, the Soothies are fine, or like the MAM, the ones that are cut out. I really worry about some of those big ones that look like they're going to cover the nostrils. You know, and then it didn't happen to us, but I had talked to a nurse who was telling me that they had sent a baby home with, I guess the Soothies come in different, like preemie and different sizes, and they sent the baby home with it. Well, now the baby's like 6 or 7 months old, still using this tiny little binky. Well, it was so little, the mother, the baby like put it in the mouth, and the mother, you know, scooped it out. Fortunately, the baby was fine. But it's like, okay, see, we have to tell them every single thing, because avoid overheating. So I think that in the Midwest, we're really good in the summertime. We dress our kids in a diaper and a t-shirt when it's hot. But the minute it hits like 40, we dress them like they're going to the North Pole. They got long sleeve t-shirts on, and they fold the little cuff over, then put on a velour out, you know, warm up suit, and put a hat on them, and put them in the seat and wrap them up, and, you know, zip up this thing that, you know, those car seat covers, and you see this or this, you know, where the flap is down sometimes. Then they cover the whole thing with a big blanket. Yeah. And they're walking around in a t-shirt. So, you know, I think that's another thing that's going to be really difficult for us to overcome, but to teach parents that babies don't need any more layers of clothing than what we're wearing. Do not use monitors as a strategy to reduce the risk of SIDS. So that means not those walkie-talkies, like that's what I had, you know, you could hear the baby making noise, and if you don't pay attention, your neighbors are going to also hear what's going on in your house, or the TV screens where you can actually see the baby. We're talking more about like Angel Care Monitor. It's a movement monitor. It's about the size of a book, and it goes between the mattress and the sheet. And if the baby's laying on it, you know, because the baby's always, you know, moving, if the baby doesn't move for like 15 or 20 seconds, then it'll like shake the baby, and if the baby doesn't move, it starts to go whoop, 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 and it, you know, wakes everybody up. But that's more of a novelty. The AAP does not recognize that as, you know, a monitor, not like the apnea monitors that my kids wore in the 80s. And also there's a new one, I don't know how new it is, but it clips to the diaper. It's called a snoozer. So as the baby is has the abdominal movements, it's moving. It's a movement monitor. And there's people who swear by it. And as long as they understand that it doesn't predict or prevent SIDS, you know, as long as they understand that, then, you know, they can certainly use it. But all that stuff's really expensive. Immunize. I know I'm preaching to the choir, but this is such an important thing. It is actually more likely for an unimmunized baby to die from whooping cough than it is for an immunized baby to die from SIDS. So, you know, we know that the healthier the baby, the less likely they are to die from SIDS. And we need to do tummy time, and it needs to start at birth. So often when I talk to new moms, especially the younger moms, they think that they can't put the baby on the tummy until the umbilical cord falls off. And, you know, telling them that this is not hurting the baby and it's okay, and they're not going to sleep on their belly. We're just going to start from day one, put them on their tummy. They only have to be on their back when they're sleeping. And our brochure is called Safe Sleep 365 for a reason, because the AAP says we should place the babies down to sleep on their back for the first year of life. Once they begin to roll back and forth, we all know, once they start doing that, if your baby wants to sleep on their belly, you could flip that child all day, and they're not going to stay on their belly, or they're not going to stay on their back. But by then, they've mastered other things, and they'll be fine. It is normal growth and development for them to be flipping. But we want to make sure that they, get on their back. They only have to be there for sleeping. So, carrying the baby up on their shoulder, when the baby's a little bit bigger, carrying the baby on their hip, carrying the baby in a football hold, anything where they have to work, really hard to work their upper body, head and neck, that's all good stuff. So, and we usually tell the parents to start with 10 or 15 seconds at a time, 2 or 3 times a day, and keep moving up to it. And there still are times that no matter how good you are with tummy time, sometimes kids still have to have a helmet or have a band, and that does happen. But we can see less of it if the parents do good tummy time. Sometimes parents will say, well, she hates it so much, and it's like, yeah, I hate to pay my taxes, but we all got to do stuff. So here's Harlow again. This is that little baby with the red hair. And yeah, she did not, and nobody loves her. She has no toys. But sleeping on her belly, or being on her tummy, she hated it. You know why? Because they're weak. They can't hold up their head yet. So that's why we keep, and I tell parents, sit at your kitchen table, with your baby. Never leave your baby alone, but make eye contact and, play with your baby, sing and do all these things. And you do it for short periods of time, and pretty soon, your baby's going to get stronger and stronger. This is my son, and you could tell he was a belly sleeper because he was at 3 months he was flying. But tummy time is very important, and I think that for many years the SIDS organizations kind of dropped the ball because we were so excited to have a way to help reduce the risk of SIDS by putting babies on their back that we forgot about the importance of tummy time. So if you look at kids who are like in high school, those are the kids that have the wonky heads, like my niece. God bless her, and it was I take responsibility for it because I didn't say anything to my sister and I knew better. But Michaela spent so much time in the same position, and the main thing is I took care of her from the time she was born till she went to kindergarten while my sister worked. And I am a right-handed person, so I carried Michaela in this arm, and because she was so beautiful, I never put her down. She was, like glued to my arm. And so when I would feed her like this, and her head was always resting here. Well, so did my sister. So did my brother-in-law, so did everybody else. So Michaela's got a flat spot right here on her head that you can't tell until like she gets out of the shower and her hair is really plastered to her, very thin. And it's like, they always call me Annie. Annie, this is your fault. And it doesn't have anything to do with how you read, how smart you are, anything like that. But, you get to middle school, weird, those girls are mean. So, we just want to not have these flat-headed kids. But I've seen some kids with some really bad plagiocephaly. Like this poor little guy, he clearly didn't have enough tummy time, but his eyes are all bugged out. He did wear a helmet, and look at how beautiful he is. I mean, so some kids still have to be helmeted. And a lot of times with multiples of cases, because they're all squished in there, they might have to have some help. But, we want to work really hard to make sure parents understand it. And, of course, they don't want to hear their baby cry, and they don't want their baby to be sad, so that they stop doing it. But we want to make sure we encourage them to do that. This is one of my favorite tips, and pathways.org is an excellent resource for developmental issues. They're another nonprofit that we work with. And so what they do is to help us remind which side of the bed, let me start again. To remember where we're going to put the baby. So if I'm standing here, if this is the wall, if this is the door, and here's the head of the crib, and here's the foot of the crib, baby's going to look towards the door because that's where the good stuff comes from, right? So today is the 7th, so today's an odd day. So we're going to put baby's head at the foot of the bed. So now they're going to look like this. And tomorrow is an even numbered day. We're going to put their head at the head of the crib, and now they're going to have to sleep like this. So you can see how it helps to prevent torticollis, right? So you don't have the kid with wry neck. It also helps to keep their head, from getting a flat spot. They are going to have a bald spot, and I always remind parents it will grow back. I promise you, it will grow back. But we want to try to avoid having this whole flat head. So I think this is an easy way to remember. So I'm just going to finish up here with just because they sell it doesn't mean it's safe. And I just picked a few things because these are things that I think are just, you'll be able to tell which ones I really hate. So this is the bumbo seat, and again, this was developed by a parent, and I think that if it was used in the manner that it was supposed to be, it could really be an effective tool for parent or child care provider. But if the baby has to be awake and has to have upper body, head, and neck strength to be able to sit in it, why would you have a baby sleeping in it? We had a 4-week-old baby that died in a bumbo seat. A 4-week-old, they have nothing. Put the baby in there, a parent fell asleep, and when the parent woke up, the baby truly had folded in half and was gone. You know, just didn't, anyways, it's been recalled. But it's been recalled because parents don't keep it on the floor. They put it on the table, they put it on the counter, you know, they put it on the car, the hood of the car while they're doing something. And of course the baby's moving and rocking and, you know, falls over and fractures her skull. So this is the nap nanny, and this was recalled a couple times. It was finally recalled by the CPSC because the company refused to recall it. And so again, if it's used the way it's supposed to be, because here's the baby napping in it, okay? So I'm doing the dishes or I'm making supper and the baby's right here and I can see the baby and I got my eyes on the baby most of the time, and that's what it's made for. But in a number of cases, at least 6, the whole seat was placed in the crib because it was time to go to bed and the parents didn't want to wake the baby up. So they put the baby, the whole nap nanny, right into the crib. And in a couple of the cases, the baby was trying to get out in the middle of the night and was struggling, and the parents didn't hear the baby, and when they got up the next morning thinking, oh, baby finally slept through the night, but had probably been dead for many hours, got stuck trying to, you know, get out and got wedged, and their face was against the bumpers and they suffocated. And a few of them where the baby was rocking so much they actually flipped the entire seat and it was on their back, so the baby was now prone in the mattress but couldn't get it off their back. And so it was finally recalled. So if you, that's another one of those things that if you see it, you know, it's not, we don't recommend it. A car seat, of course, is, you know, a good idea. We need to have that. And I can understand having a little shade here, but to zip it all the way up when the baby's in it, I don't get at all. Here's this little sling thing that mom is carrying, and it just cracks me up because it doesn't look comfortable at all. She just needs a little holder for her Starbucks and she'll be all good. And this baby, look at all that junk in the crib with the baby, you know, and this, we do see this sometimes. It's all pink, clearly it's a little girl, but you know, all that stuff in there is very, very dangerous. Another bottle prop, those things drive me absolutely crazy. You know, I went to a baby expo and the father had designed this, he called it a feeding assist, and I said to him, it's a bottle prop, and he goes, well, it's a feeding assist. I go, it's a bottle prop, and he actually wrote in his testimony, the baby would get so aggravated because I was taking too much time to, you know, fix the bottle, and I would get aggravated, and the baby could sense it, and I'm thinking, you actually wrote that, and you're sharing that with people? Why did you have a baby? He left actually, and he took down his website because sometimes I do shame people into doing the right thing. So, but you know what? It's like, think about this, people. So anyways, you know, we want to be aware of that. This is supposed to be for head molding so the baby doesn't get a flat spot. But again, you know, it's still like a type of positioner. And yeah, the baby looks really cute like that, but we don't want babies sleeping on their side, you know, so that just kind of throws out the whole AAP stuff if we use that. And here's a baby sleeping with a pillow. Babies do not need pillows. It isn't when they go into a big girl bed or a big boy bed and they want a pillow because mom and dad have a pillow, big brother has a pillow, then it's okay, but never ever in a crib. And to have a top sheet in a crib, I've seen them, like a fitted sheet with a top sheet like we might make our beds. Why? I don't know. I mean, that would be extremely dangerous. And this is to like a harness. You put the baby in the harness and it helps to keep the baby's head elevated. And so if the doctor orders it, because if, you know, it's even babies who have reflux, who can hit the wall, do fine sleeping on their back. But there are some babies who have strictures and other GI problems that they do need to be elevated a little bit. And so then they're positioned in here. So, you know, we just say go whatever the pediatric gastroenterologist tells you to do. And this is off of Pinterest, has so much stuff that you can make that is cute but not necessarily safe. So this is, I think it's rice. Yeah. So this is to help keep the baby warm. Well, you might do something like this in the NICU if the baby is having trouble with their temperature. I don't know, I'm just guessing. But how dangerous is this if a parent heats it up in the microwave? How hot does that thing get? You could easily burn the baby. But here's somebody on Pinterest who's trying to show you how to make one at home. This thing has been recalled. And, you know, I get that. It looks like it could be a good idea. The kid falls asleep there. But if you have a small child, what if they, you know, what if they suffocate having their face on there? Or they strangle? This I call the Hannibal Lecter pacifier. Right? It's actually from Europe. But this is so that the baby, you know, when they don't spit out their pacifier. If the baby doesn't want the pacifier, why would you make them keep it in? This, you heat it up for heating up the bottles in the car. But again, how do you know what the temperature is? You know, how many kids do you think were burned with that? And here's the sling. And I think that there's value in the sling when you're a nursing mother, you know, for modesty, for privacy, if you want to, you know, like that. But for a baby to be carried like this, do you think that baby is breathing and exchanging well? I doubt it. Plus, it's hot in there. You don't have a lot of fresh air. So I know there was just recently Jill Duggar, aside from all the other stuff, was being shamed on Facebook because she had her newborn infant in something like this. And she was being shamed by a lot of people, especially in the SIDS community, which was so embarrassing that I couldn't even believe that people were doing that. But people can be mean. I wish they would have had this when I was a new mom because, you know, you have to go to the bathroom so badly and you're telling your kids, don't touch anything, right? But this is a real thing. It's a carrier that you wear, but then you can hook it on the door when you get to the bathroom. If any of your families come with this, please take them away. I can't believe they haven't been recalled. So I think they're called Wubba Nubbas or something like that. And again, not to my knowledge, there haven't been any deaths, but there was a 5-month-old who had a duck. And the dad gave it to the baby to go to sleep. And when Daddy went back to check the baby, like a half hour, 45 minutes later, and the baby was starting to turn blue because he had started to swallow the foot or whatever, you know, the webbed foot, and the baby didn't know to get it out or whatever. And the daddy ripped it out of the baby's mouth, and the baby was fine. But oh my gosh, what if the daddy didn't go to check on the baby, you know, and that had gone on all night? So
yeah, but we can't take them away, Nancy. I mean, we can tell them.
You can't. Why can't you? Oh,
because it's theirs. Belongs to them.
Right, but can you tell them that they can't use a mother here?
We do. I mean, we're real assertive about that, but we see not a lot of them, but enough to be alarmed.
But see, again, on Pinterest, they'll show you how to, you know, get a beanie and take a pacifier and sew it together.
Oh my God.
And you know, so here's the Angel Care Monitor. Here's a rocking high chair. I don't know what, and this is to keep a baby from getting a flat head. This is this little pillow blow-up thing you put in the back of their T-shirt to prop them on one side or the other. Again, we don't want babies to, you know, be sleeping on their side. People come up with crazy things. I know, and I hate these. I hate these so much. And they have tiny little pinholes in them. But I know, like in the city, you know, people who go to public transportation, you know, if it's raining, they want to cover the baby up. But I tell them, you know, your baby's not made out of sugar. They're not going to melt. They're going to get a little bit wet. You know, you could cover them a little bit with a blanket. But when I see condensation running down the inside of it, I just about lose my mind. And why would you have a car seat with a plastic cover? I don't understand that at all. So remember the ABCs of infant safe sleep: alone, on back, in a safe crib, in a smoke-free environment. So basically, we want to keep all of our rock stars safe. So he's got a pull-up on his head. I think that's fine. And this is to honor my husband. He's a psychotherapist, so they act like they own me. So, because of course we do. So not only do we do the education and we provide education, we keep up to date with what's happening with the AAP. We work with other organizations to keep up with what's being recalled, what current theories are, and I also do the bereavement work. So if you have a family, regardless of the cause of death, birth to age 1, that suffers a loss, we don't do cold calls. So like I don't scour the newspaper and look for, you know, deaths. And we only would call if the parent wants it, you know, because that's how we work. But if you have a family who's had a loss, if they want, you know, if you're talking, whether it's a fetal demise or whatever, you can offer my phone number and our name and my name and our number. You can contact me and give me their information, and I can reach out to them if that's okay with them. And sometimes it's not even at the beginning. Sometimes it might be when a subsequent child is born that they, you know, kind of get all shook up. So
Maybe some we can put in our bereavement packet.
I have
It's
some.
available for them.
I have some books that actually I can send to Terry there. You Are Not
That would be
Alone.
good.
It's have you had it before? You've probably we wrote it. We've updated it. So
Okay.
Thank
okay,
you,
thank you very much.
Thank you very much.